Hi guys, I'm the Definite Article for Grinder School, and this is the second part of my 100 NL Zoom review. As I mentioned in the last part, we're focusing on how ranges play against each other, so we're doing a lot of focus on hand reading, we're doing a lot of focus on combos within a range, and we're also doing a lot of exploitative calling and folding. So, without further ado, I've got a bunch more hands. I doubt I'm going to finish the remainder that I've got in this video, so I'll just get on with it. Here we 3-bet Jack blind suited, 150 big blinds effective, against the tightest reckoner cutoff, who calls. We're making it a bit bigger because we're a bit deeper. Flop plays King 10. Obviously we have a load of nutted combos. We have pocket kings, pocket tens, ace king. We're not going to see bet aces, but we have it. We have ace 10, although our opponent has that too. And both players probably have queen jack suited, but not queen jack offsuits. Very occasionally, the small we will have queen jack suited, but not that often. And our opponent should never have queen jack suited, and he was folding a decent amount. So 3-bets in the cutoff, so I think that's a reasonable assumption. Because of the rainbow nature of the board and the fact that most of our hands with Broadway cards in them have at least a pair on this flop, we don't actually have that many hands which are obvious to bluff. So that means we basically want to be betting any queen and any jack and any jack, probably including queen 10 and jack 10 as a bluff. We can also bet hands like 9-8 of diamonds and hearts and spades as a bluff because they have some decent backdoors. But apart from that, we don't have any very obvious bluffs. So we'd expect us to have, given it's a flop spot, we'd expect us to have, if anything, too many bluffs. Too many value hands rather than too many bluffs, which is unusual. On this flop, he should have a decent number of ace-x, some king-x which aren't folding, so king, queen, king, jack. He might peel 10, jack, 10, queen, and obviously he has queen, jack, and ace 10 and king 10. He probably has pocket tens too. But our range is definitely stronger, and he just always has to fold. Hands like 9s through 6s. He might have down to pocket deuces given how deep we are. He also always has to fold. Well, there's not much else he always has to fold, but hands like 8-7 suited, obviously he has to fold too. Although technically that's worse than our hand. He might start bluffing at some stage, so it's not bad. It probably has non-zero EV when we check, so it's probably good for us if he folds that type of hand. So yeah, we see bet standard. The turn, notably, this basically removes any trace of equity our hands like 9-8 suited and 8-7 suited had. No flush draws have turned, and obviously no straight draws which are in a range have arrived. 4-3 suited, 4-2 suited, 3-2 suited. None of those are in our range pre, and none of those are in his range pre. So it's basically an ultimate blank. We barrel because, well, again, we're really struggling for bluffs. At our widest, our range has 3 combos of jack 10 suited. That's 3. Add 4 combos of jack 9 suited. This is at its widest. At 7, add 4 combos of jack 8 suited. That's 11. Add 3 combos of queen 10 suited. That's 14. Add 4 combos of queen 9 suited. That's 18. Add 4 combos of queen 8 suited. That's 22. But realistically, we're nearly never going to 3-bet jack 8 or queen 8 suited, and we might sometimes check the flop with queen 10 and jack 10 suited. And we might not always 3-bet queen 9 suited either. So we probably have more like 10 combos of bluffs here. And we obviously have tons of value combos. 4 queen jack suited, maybe some queen jack offsuits. God, I hate working out how many combos of something which are blocks we have. So 12, 9 combos of ace king, I think. 2 combos of king 10 suited. 9 combos of ace 10. 3 combos of kings and 3 combos of 10. So I lost count. I think that's about 26 combos of value hands, so we can just keep barreling all our bluffs basically. Except the ones that are just complete air. I mean, arguably, to be balanced, we should be bluffing those as well, but I don't think it's necessary. Considering, given a range of his which folds this flop, I don't think this turn is actually getting folded much at all. So I think when we do bet this turn, we ought to be doing it with the intention of triple barreling. Because if you think about what we said was calling this flop, so there's ace-x hands. Because he's pretty tight, I don't think he has any ace-x worse than ace-9, ace-10 rather pre, so he doesn't have ace-deuce to ace-9. There are king-x, which all have a straight draw except for king-9, which he probably folds in the time. There's queen-jack, obviously, is a straight, queen-10, he might not always have a jack-10. Those should probably be folding the turn, but because he's got a pair and a straight draw, he might get sticky. And sometimes he peels a flop with jacks, which again has a pair and a straight draw and might get sticky, but notably it's not as good a pair because it only has 2 outs. It only has 2 outs to improve the pair components of its hand. So we don't expect him to fold often, but we barrel anyway. And based on this, we also follow through the river and expect him to fold certainly anything worse than an ace, and also never to fold anything better than 2 pair, pretty much. So if we assume he shows up at this river with, let's arbitrarily, I mean, it's not really arbitrary. Let's just take a guess at what combos he shows up at this river with. Let's say queen jack suited. Queen jack suited. He has pocket 10s. So actually, let's pull up Equilab. This is going to be easy rather than me just talking it through because I will lose track of combos again. So let's quickly input the board. Ace of spades, 10 of diamonds, king of hearts. Turn is a 5 of clubs. River is the 7 of diamonds. He's the cut-off. So he's going to reach the river with queen jack suited, pocket 10s, ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, probably not ace 10 off. All the combos are king queen, let's say king jack suited. King 10 is pretty close. And let's also give him jack 10 suited to indicate like hands that he might sometimes have, like pocket jacks, etc. So he reaches this river with 51 combos. We're bluffing for about 60% pots, so we're risking 3 to win 5. So we need it to win. We need it to work. Crikey, 37.5% of the time. My maths is going, so that might be wrong. But 3 over 8, I think, is risk over risk plus reward. 3 over 8, 37.5% of the time. So 3 over 8 makes that 18 plus 1, 19 combos. So we need him to fold 19 combos for this to be a break-even bluff. Let's actually enter our hand as well, because that's going to affect things. Whoops, wrong button. Jack 9 clubs. Okay. So 37 point. Oh crikey, I'm gonna have to work this out again. 3/8. 8 times 5. 5 is an eighth of 40. Then that's about another. Then 3/8. So 15 over. So 15 of the 40, and then let's say another 2 of the remainder. So that's 17 combos. We need him to fold. So we need him, once we remove the combos he's folding, to have no more than 28 combos here. He's always folding jack 10 suited. He's always folding a king. Do we say 28 combos he has to have left? I think so, yeah. So pretty much, it looks like in order to break even, obviously he's never folding 10s, queen jack or ace 10. Given our assumptions, we need him to fold ace jack. some of the time, but not all of the time. So I mean, even if he just folds the suited ace jack combos, all, then we're all of a sudden getting enough folds. If he folds all the ace jack combos, we have a hugely profitable bluff because he's folding over half his range. But if we never fold ace jack, we have a slightly bad bluff. As it happens, I don't know whether, given the assumptions against this specific player, the bluff was good or not, because he called with ace queen, which I think is a pretty clear call given our assumptions. If I had to guess, I think the bluff's probably good. He had a pretty low when to showdown, which likely indicates he's folding a lot post flop. But certainly, based on our range, based on what we want to value bet, if we want to be balanced, even for this small sizing, we pretty much need to bet this hand, given it's pretty much the best bluff in our range. Maybe Jack 10 suited is better actually, because he probably doesn't show up at the river with that many 10x. He's folding, so he has King 10 suited, Ace 10, pocket 10s, and then maybe 1 or 2 Queen 10, Jack 10 combos which are folding. So I think that's actually a positive blocker, so we'd rather bluff Jack 10 here than Jack 9. But still, I think Jack 9 is a decent bluff. Okay, next hand. I've been through a similar one to this already in a previous video. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, this is actually a very similar thought process to this hand. And it's basically talking about how we sometimes need to bluff ace-king post-flop due to a particular board section, meaning it's rarely ahead, but also struggling for bluffs in our range, which means bluffing ace-king is going to be more profitable than checking it. And I think this is a similar board texture. Again, it's Jack XX, two-tone, and on this turn in particular, it should be noted that it's very tough for us to have many bluffs, considering we're going to be betting most of our 9x and 8x on the flop. And those aren't obvious, really better bluffs than ace-king anyway, because they both have got shot ace-king is to the nuts. But because we are possibly betting some hands like ace-8 suited on the turn, I think it's legitimate to bluff this river. And we might also show up with king-queen a very small percentage of the time. Plus we can probably play pocket jacks this way and value jam this river. Value bet this river, given was this a jam given stack depth? 87. Yeah, this was a jam. So yeah, pretty similar hand. And I'm actually going to put these together so I look at them together later. Next hand, flat ace jack. Again, this is probably the fourth hand we've had against this guy. Tight reg, nothing special. Haven't seen him do anything untoward either. And I think I played this one pretty badly on the river. Call an open pre-flop. We check back the flop because it's quite nice to have some flush draws in our check back range, especially considering he will have some flush draws in his flop checking range. Although, given we have the 80 clubs, he just probably doesn't really have any flush draws left. So I don't think it's too important to have some flush draws in our check back range. But it's nice to be uncapped on club turns just in case he does check 10, 9 clubs or whatever from time to time here. Turn, very easy call, never anything else. River, so obviously we're just repping a 10 when we do this. We don't rep a huge range, but we're going to check back ace 10 on the flop a decent percentage of the time, especially when it is spades or hearts, which means that we have two obvious combos of value bets. If we have king 10 suited pre, which we probably do considering I think the small blind was a fish, then we show up with king 10 suited here every time we have it pre, which is another 3 combos. Queen 10 suited is getting much more sketchy. I think only one of the blinds was a fish, so it's definitely very close pre. So we might have a few more combos. We certainly can rep a few more combos. And occasionally we can rep having made a bad call on the turn with pocket 10s. After calling the turn, we don't have many hands to obviously bluff with, which don't want to bet the flop. So especially with the ace of diamonds on the board. We might have 10-9 of diamonds, possibly Jack-9 and Jack-9 of diamonds with the fish in the blinds. Obviously, actually 10-9 of diamonds is a straight, isn't it? But we simply don't have, we're not as wide as 7-6 of diamonds pre. We're betting most worst club draws on the flop. And we're folding pretty much everything else on a turn. So for instance, Jack-9 of diamonds is just going to be a turn, Jack-9 of spades is just going to be a turn fold here. And we might bet that on the flop some percentage of the time. We're folding anything worse than pocket tens on the turn. Pocket tens and worse, we're folding the turn. So we don't actually have that many bluffs. Whether our blockers are good, I'm not sure, to be honest. I think I'd rather have the ace of hearts here. Considering I think he's more likely to bet the flop with ace-10 of clubs and ace-10 of hearts. But apart from that, I think he never has jack-10, so a jack's pretty much irrelevant. I think he never has pocket tens, and he only very occasionally has queen-10. So I think he's making a mistake in betting river, given we have more 10x than he does. I think raising is probably fine. Calling might also be fine, just in case he's making a thin value bet with king-queen, which probably doesn't check with flop, and probably doesn't bet the river. So he's more likely to be making a thin value bet with ace-king or ace-queen, which is another argument for raising. Right then, next hand. Small blind's irregular. We defend 7-8, blind against blind. Standard. Flop and open-ender. Not a board we really want the raising range on because we don't have that many strong hands. We have 6-5. Suited, definitely, possibly offsuits. We don't really have 6-2 or 5-2. We probably have 4-3 suited. And we also have 6s, 5s and 2s, but that's not a whole load of combos considering our opponent has 9s plus and we don't have any of those hands. Turn, naturally, it seems, excuse me, it seems that we have more 6x than our opponents. Firstly, we're wider pre, given it's blind against blind, but also, if our opponent is at all aware of the need to protect his checking range, if he has a checking range on his board, which I think is legitimate for him not to, he will be checking a decent percentage of his 6x here. So with that in mind, he shouldn't really be betting that wide. I think he's probably over betting his flop spot too wide, so we could explosively raise. But I think our hand is strong enough to call again. In this spot, I do call because I'm planning to raise the river. Our blockers are actually very good here. We block 8-6 and 7-6, which is much more likely to happen in hands like 10-6. Or even 9-6 or jack-6 or queen-6. And ace, the 6x is obviously most likely to have its ace-6. But so the thing is, with ace-6, when we have an ace, we're often going to want to call the river, because this is a spot where both ranges are really weak. Ace high is often good, and he's never bluffing ace high. That's the important thing. On this river, he triple barrels. I mean, again, I don't think this is really a good river for him to bet very wide. The thing is, he should never really have an ace here. Okay, maybe ace-6 specifically, though that should check the flops and percentage, and maybe aces. Maybe ace-king, which has gone for 2 streets of really thin value, or ace-queen or whatever. But apart from that, we have far more ace-x than he does. We also have more 6x. As we did on the turn. This means that our range actually has a significant advantage over his on this river. So I think it's best for him to check and less his bets, even with his nutted hands. But he decides to bet. The sizing looks kind of shitty. Not shitty. Looks kind of weak. I think most people who have a 6 here bet quite big and hope you cooler a 6. But apart from that, yeah, basically we follow through with our plan of bluff raising the river. We have decent blockers. And it's probably a mistake for him to be betting in the first place, which tends to indicate that he's bluff heavy, because people get through a river like this with a hand like Jack 10 that they've double barreled for whatever reason, and they think, oh, if I check this I just lose, and so they don't think. But a lot of people, their thought process aren't yet complex enough to get to the stage of, but I should probably be checking most of my value hands here. So with that in mind, it doesn't make sense for me to have a bluffing range here, because I don't have a value betting range here. Instead, they just think, oh, the EV of checking is probably about 0, without considering a check raise bluff from time to time, although Jack 10 would be a bad hand for that. And they just fire away, which I mean it's better than just always check folding, I think, because a lot of people will fold this river a lot. I mean, if you get to this river with pocket 7s, if you're not doing much hand reading, it's actually quite hard to call with pocket 7s, because you think, oh, 6 beats me, 8 plus beats me, it's so many combos, I fold. So I think bluffing against the population is probably slightly plus EV. But the thing is, anyone decent shouldn't be folding much here. Now, we raise and he calls. Unfortunately, he showed up with Queen 6, which Queen 6 suited actually specifically, which is probably pretty close to the top of his range. I still think he should probably check the river, although with Queen 6 specifically, Queen 6 specifically makes a lot more sense to bet than a hand like Ace 6, because it's much harder for Queen 6 to check raise the river for value. Given we have 6-5, Ace 6, pocket 5s, pocket 2s, maybe 4, and 4-3 suited. So I guess it kind of makes sense in a vacuum, but I think he'd still be better off checking the river based on his range. So yeah, I think that's an interesting hand. The play didn't work this time, but I think it's going to be very profitable in the long run. And it's actually kind of interesting spot where you might almost want to consider calling with King Queen high or something. Okay, same player. We make a kind of loose 3-bet with Jack 9 suited, a button against under the gun. We're a bit deep, and we can call 4 bets with this hand, so I think it's probably fine. We flop a Jack with backdoor flush draw. It's pretty much decent showdown value. We check back. I mean, it's worth noting that this board definitely favours under the gun's range, because he has Jacks and 10s and the button doesn't. Button maybe has Jack stack depth, but most of the time he doesn't. Jack 10 suited is also exclusively in under the gun's range, and under the gun probably has 4s at this stack depth too. So it doesn't make sense for the button to bet often here. But also Jack 9 suited is a good hand to use to protect your checking range, and you also block hands like Jacks and Jack 10. He bets a turn. We've turned club draw. Nothing to do except call. Any other option is plainly daft. River. So I think this river spot is really close between checking and betting as a bluff. So betting as a bluff might seem absurd. We have second pair, but it's actually quite tough to see what realistically he's betting a turn with, and then checking this river that we beat. I think we can instantly exclude him betting the turn for value with worse. So basically we're looking for the hands with which he bets the turn as a bluff. King Queen gets there, which is a very decent portion of his bluffs. Any Ace, Queen, Ace, King hand gets there. And then he has hands like ace nine, 8 8 9 suited. And the thing is, especially on this river where he has king queen and we don't, he should really nearly always, if not always, be betting 9 8 suited. So, I mean, the same applies to pretty much any hand which is worse than the pair. He should be bluffing it because his range is strong, ours isn't. And I mean, we have ace king probably, but that's not really that strong because he has ace jack, ace 10. Well, not ace 10, but he has ace jack, king queen, arguably both suits and offsuits. He has pocket jacks, pocket 10s. He has pocket 4s. He has pocket 5s, and we have none of those hands. So yeah, we have to call with ace king, but it's by no means a spot where the fact that we have ace king, the fact that we have top pair, top kicker in our range, means that our range is stronger. So it does kind of make sense to bet a jack as a bluff. The thing is, I think a lot of people will often check this river with whatever ace x of hearts or clubs they bet the turn with, or maybe even ace queen, ace king. And I don't think those are ever folding. He also might not fold queen jack, king jack, which are pretty much the bottom of his range. And we also block those hands, which is really bad. We do not want to block the hands that we want to fold. This is probably in his folding range. So I think from a balance perspective, this is a pretty clear bet. Maybe queens is a better hand to bet in terms of blockers, but obviously that wins at showdown sometimes. And we also don't have that many combos. We probably bet queens which doesn't have a heart in it. So while from a balance perspective, I think it's a pretty clear bet. Exploitatively, I just don't think he's folding enough to justify betting here. If we do want to bet, so his folding frequency would probably mean that we need to bet like a third pot. And against that sizing, he might just cycle with queen jack, which is the bottom of his range here. Pardon me. So yeah, I think that's quite an interesting hand. Checking has a very low EV, but we should probably check anyway. He actually showed up with kings, which I think shows he's playing really badly deeply. While admittedly you don't want to get kings in onto the gun against the button for 160 big blinds, the fact that you're 4-betting doesn't mean you're getting all in. If somebody's 5-bet jamming 160 big blinds, they have something seriously wrong with their strategy. So you can definitely have a range under the gun in that spot for 4-betting and then calling a 5-bet, which you're not delighted about, but it's notable that our 5-bet value range in that spot would pretty much just be aces, given positions, and so it's also perfectly feasible for the button in this spot simply not to have a 5-betting range, which is a strong argument in favour of 4-betting, because you don't have to 4-bet a strong value hand like kings, and then end up in a spot where pre-flop it's already a bluff catcher, which is really bad. So yeah, I think he should definitely have a 4-betting range. King should definitely be in it. And well, I think the way he played post-flop is probably fine. Maybe he should bluff the river because he blocks ace king. But I think he probably has enough bluffs anyway, so I don't care. I don't think post-flop's that bad, if it's as bad at all. Okay, this is a fun hand. A fish opens middle position. We 3-bet to isolate an aggressive regular that we've discussed before, hold 4-bets in a small blind. We call because we're deep and we have pocket 9s, and he's been in this is about the third time he's called 4-betters in this session, especially when we've been 3-betting a fish. We think I think it's likely that he's realised that with 3-betting most of our continuance range against a fish, so in this position we're probably have about his 20% 3-bet range, which means he can call 4-bets about 10% himself, maybe a bit wider. We flop a gut shot. It's obviously much better for our range than for his. With that said, I still expect him to bet most aces through queens combos. He checks and we check back. Turns a 10. Now the thing is, he doesn't really have that many 10x in his range. Ace 10 is far from the best hand to call 4 best as a bluff. 10-9 suited is pretty decent considering he's out of position, but we block it quite substantially. I mean, well, to be honest, we actually only block 10-9 of spades, considering he only has 10-9 suited, but that leaves one combo. We also have Queen 10 suited, possibly Ace 10 suited, possibly. We also always have Ace 10 suited, possibly have King 10 suited, Queen 10 suited. Always have 10-9 suited, and possibly have 10-8 suited ourselves. So the fact that he's betting pot here, which simply doesn't make sense for him to do, with queens plus an ace, with queens through aces, if he doesn't bet the flop with them, it's a bit weird. I mean, sometimes he has pocket jacks, and that's 3 combos. But considering I played a decent bit against him, and he's been pretty aggressive over that sample, I think it's certainly a spot where the fact that we do block one combo of 10-9 suited is pretty significant. So we call the turn, he jams the river, we're getting 3-1. We call because we want to be a bit of a hero, and the speed with which he jammed the river, he snap jammed the river, which I don't think he does with pocket jabs. Or indeed, if he's making his bet on a turn at all with them, he never snap jams queens plus. So his value range is really tight here. I think his bluff range is pretty wide. And this was confirmed. He showed up with ace-king offsuits, which obviously indicates he has a ton of bluffs here, and compared to his relatively few value hands. So I'm pretty happy with that call. You'll note the power of blockers. Obviously, 9 of spades, 9 of clubs would have been probably, aside from the 10x we have, that would probably have been a nut best hand to call with there. Although I'm not sure actually 10x would be better. Although, okay, 10x which beats 10-9 is clearly better, because it beats some of his value range, but apart from that, this is a pretty reasonably, wow, this is a really good hand to call with. And yeah, arguably Jack 9 suited we would also rather call with, especially Jack 9 of clubs. But apart from that, 9 is a pretty decent hand to call with. 8 is actually a clear fold here, I think. And although they are pretty much the same hand in terms of absolute value, their blocker value, even if this only blocks one value combo, considering how tight his value range is at 5 combos at the widest, and probably much tighter, it actually makes it quite a significant difference. Okay, next hand. This Matt Yaz, the button, is a really bad regular. He folds too much everywhere, spazzes too much everywhere, and calls too much everywhere. That doesn't make sense to whole, but basically what I mean is there are loads of spots he folds far too much, there are loads of spots he raises far too much, and there are loads of spots he calls far too much. So he's basically just really bad. We 3-bet small blind against button, he 4-bets, we call. Thing is, based on my read, he has all the combos of ace king and ace queen here. Obviously ace king, but all the combos of ace queen as well. He's probably also 4-betting jacks plus the value, probably not 10s. On this flop, he's a type who isn't really clever enough to protect his checking ranges, so he's just betting all the overpairs. And that's pretty much a simple reason why we can bet the turn and jam the river with a hand as weak as top pair, pretty much no kicker. Occasionally he has ace 9 here, and we lose, and that sucks. But the fact is, he has 32 combos of ace queen and ace king here. He doesn't need to call very often with those to justify the very rare occasions he has ace 9. And he did in fact call with ace queen, which I think is pretty horrendous. But then again, I'm not exactly going to complain. And I think what I'm trying to show you with this hand is how when your opponent caps their range, it actually substantially increases the size of the range that you can bet for value as well as a bluff. Now, naturally, if you've seen my recent theory video on overbetting, then that will make a lot of sense. You'll have known that already, hopefully. If not, I recommend you watch that video. But anyway, this is a very important point. This is just a not overbetting hand, in which is good to demonstrate the points. I'm going to close that one because I don't want to look at it later. Okay, this is against the aggro reg again. And this is actually different in that we make a big fold rather than a big call. We call with ace queen, middle position against under the gun. Everyone else folds. Our range is obviously quite tight here. We have ace queen, ace king, offsuits. His opening range under the gun wasn't quite wide enough that we would 3-bet ace king. We have ace jack suited to ace king suited. We have sevens through queens. We have king queen suited, king queen through 10-9 suited as suited connectors. And we have king jack suited, I think. I think that's pretty much our entire range in that spot. So when we call the flop, we're very high in our range, but we're also folding most of our 10-9 suited type hands. So we probably reach a turn with some backdoor flush draws, but we're probably not calling with a 10 high backdoor flush draw just because our range is so tight. We're also probably folding 8 through 10, so he overbets the turn. Now the thing is, I mean, I kind of get this. I think his play is probably fine. He has pocket sixes, pocket fours, possibly pocket twos. We don't. He has ace 2, ace 4, possibly ace 6. We don't. And that's what makes overbetting the turn in this spot fine. And I think it's actually quite an interesting spot to do it. The problem is, well, for us with this specific hand anyway, he doesn't have that many bluffs. Because when you have an overbetting range on the turn, when you have a hand that you really don't want to bluff, let's say he has queen jack of diamonds on this turn, it's not going to occur to you most of the time, unless you're really good, you're really thinking. It's not going to occur to you, oh, I would often overbet this turn. I'd want to overbet this turn because I have lots of value hands, which can be bet for any size. Again, go back and watch the overbetting video. I have lots of value hands which can be bet for any size. I don't have that many obvious bluffs on this turn, so the only obvious bluffs for him here, given he doesn't have any gut shots, any straight draws, are going to be club hands. So I'm going to start overbetting queen jack of diamonds, despite the fact that it has no equity against the calling range. People just don't go through that thought process very often. So he probably is very rarely bluffing hands which aren't 2 clubs. With that in mind, it's very significant that we hold the queen of clubs. And it's very bad for us, because now all of a sudden we block a ton of his bluffing range. We block king queen of clubs, queen jack of clubs, queen 10 of clubs, and he only really has king jack of clubs, king 10 of clubs, jack 10 of clubs, 10 9 of clubs left. Maybe 9 8 of clubs. So let's be generous, give him 5 combos, some of which might actually check the flop. We do obviously block some of his value combos, but he certainly has at least all the combos of pocket sixes, that's 3 combos. Let's say 2 combos of pocket twos, that's 5 combos. He has all the combos of ace 2 suited, that's another 7, that's 7 combos overall. Has some of the combos of ace 6 suited, let's give him half of them, that's 8 overall. Very rarely has ace 4 suited, but let's give him 1 combo, that's 9 overall. So already that he has 5 combos tops of bluffs. He has 9 combos probably of value hands, and he's betting 160% of the pots, which we need to be good on the river. I mean, when we're calling 160% pot, we're guessing 2.6 to 1. Are we? If we bet pot, we know. We're guessing 1.6 to... Are we? Shit. No, we're guessing 2.6 to 1, because it's pot plus 1.6 pots. We're calling 1 to win pot plus 1.6 pots. We're calling 1 to win 2.6. So we need to be good. Does that even make sense? Because we're getting 2 to 1. Sorry about this, guys. We're getting 2 to 1. I know this number. We're getting 2 to 1 if we're facing a pot size bets. So it doesn't make sense that when someone bets bigger, we're getting better odds. So it must be 1.6 to 1. Sorry about this, guys. I think I've confused myself. Oh, of course, because when we're facing a 1.6 pot bet, we're calling 1.6 pots to win 1.6 plus pots. 1.6 pot plus pots. So we're guessing 1.6 to 2.6, which is going to be about, divide by 2 first. Let's say 0.8 to 1.3, which is going to be clearly going to be less than 2 to 1. It's going to be about 1.6 to 1. I'm going to guess at 1.58. So we're gonna need about 1.5 to what? Oh, fucking hell. We're gonna need about 40 something % equity to call. And considering when he's bluffing, he actually has 9 outs. Well, given we have the Queen of Clubs 8 outs most of the time, which is going to give him 16% with most of his bluffs, and we're drawing dead against his value hands. Actually, we have three outs, so let's say we're probably going to need to call. We're probably going to need a bit more of a value to bluff ratio to call. But the point is, he doesn't have this 60% of value hands maximum that we'd need him to have in order for us to call here. And that's why, despite his hand being very high up in our range, that's why the fact that we hold the Queen of Clubs means that it's pretty important to fold the turn. If we didn't hold the Queen of Clubs, he all of a sudden has 3 more pretty obvious bluff combos, and it's actually much closer. Holding the King of Clubs would be even worse, and that's why, somewhat counterintuitively, it's actually much better to call here with some Ace Queen combos than some Ace King combos. Actually, I think it's kind of possible that he could be overbetting the turn with Ace King, because we should never beat Ace King, although we do chop with it sometimes. So that's another interesting possibility. I think overbetting the turn with aces would just be horrendous. Okay, another hand. Okay, this is just one that really confused me, so I'm not going to talk about it with you guys. If you guys do want to talk about this hand, then ask in the thread. Basically, the question is, should I bet the turn with this part of my range? And I don't know. I just bet to be safe. And it makes the hand easier to play. So here we have pocket tens. We 3-bet big blind against button, standard. We call a smallest 4-bet, also standard. Flop checks through, turn. So we could consider bluffing here. We don't really have many obvious bluffs on this turn. We have some light 3-bets with diamonds that we call that we'd want to bet, and he shouldn't really ever be stronger than Ace King here. Maybe he has aces with the Ace of Diamonds sometimes, but that's gonna be 2 combos at most. We also have queens and jacks here. Well, we probably have jacks, probably not queens, and also Ace Queen, and he doesn't. We probably also have Ace Jack suited. So we can definitely have a betting range on this turn. In contrast to most Ace X turns when the flop checks through. The reason being that he doesn't have a great density of Ace X in his 4-bet range, and also having top pair isn't that significant here, considering ranges are quite tight, and there are a lot of 2-pair plus hands in both players' ranges. Well, in our range at least. We could use his hand as a bluff. The thing is, if he does have an ace, I don't think he's going to fold it very often by the river, which kind of renders bluffing nugatory. He might sometimes fold a hand like an ace-9 offsuits, or whatever he's 4-betting light with, but if he's not 4-betting light with ace-x, then we really don't achieve much by betting this turn. Because nothing better than our hand is folding, and there are simply no scare cards to our hand. Maybe a diamond, and that's it. But naturally, ace, king, ace, queen, jack aren't scare cards because they already beat us. King, we hit a straight. And really, when he checks back the turn, he probably doesn't have diamonds anyway. So, if we're ahead here, we probably have close to 100% equity, which is quite unusual for having 4th pair effectively. But yeah, because it's quite hard for us to come up with bluffs here, we might have some hands like 6-5 suited and maybe 7-4 with diamonds, which can bluff the turn, but we don't have a whole load. I think it's probably fine to use this as a bluff in theory, but I think in practice people just aren't folding ace-x enough by the river to justify it. Same principle applies to the river, but on the river I just really think he's simply never folding anything better than our hand. And again, this is another example of the principle that it doesn't matter. If you probably need to bluff something to have a value, to have a decent value to bluff ratio, or to have any bluffs in your range at all. Although that's really not the case here, considering if we have hands like 6-5 of diamonds, and we also have some percentage of 6-5 of clubs, hearts, and spades, none of which are going to want to bet a turn. But there's simply no reason, because you still have to achieve something by betting. It's kind of interesting to think about whether we can call the river if he bets. I don't think we can, because I just think we're going to run into ace-x too often, like ace-ace offsuit, which doesn't bet a turn for whatever reason. Possibly kind of sort of interesting as to whether we could call just in case he has something like 8-6 of hearts, which is a pretty clear check back on the flop and turn. If he has a decent density of those in his range and he's playing well, he probably wants to bluff most of those on the river, which if he's bluffing all of them, if he uses those as his 4-bet bluffs rather than ace-x, then he's clearly over bluffing the river. But without specific reads on his gameplay, I knew he was a reg, but I had about 200 hands on him. It's pretty much impossible to adjust. Okay, we're actually going to go a little bit over time here and talk about one more hand. Let's look for something fun. That's not... Okay, let's maybe talk... Okay, which one's the one I want? Let's start with this one, and let's talk about this one and the next one, because I'm quite proud of these ones. We're mega deep here. Oh no, we're not as deep as I remember. We're just under 160 big blinds effective. We 3-bet aces cut off against middle position, standard middle position calls. Notably, this flop hits his spread really hard because he has all the jacks and suited, all the 9s, all the 8s, maybe pocket queens, and we don't have any 9s or 8s. He also has 9-8 suited, and we don't. Maybe we have 9-8 suited sometimes, but anyway. He has a lot more nutted hands than we do. For that reason, it doesn't make sense for us to have much of a betting range, but I think this specific combo is probably one that we want to bet some of the time, if not all of the time. But when we do have a betting range, it's certainly very legitimate for him to check raise pretty often, as he does. Because we don't really have that many nutted hands, aces is pretty close to the top of our range. But I think it's worth taking a second to pause to think about what he can be bluffing with here. So, let's say his value range is 4 combos of jacks and suited, 3 combos of 9s, 3 combos of 8s always, so that's 10 combos. And then let's say half the combos of 9-8 suited, so that's 11 combos. He has He also has, for bluffs rather, he has King Jack suited. I think it's the most obvious bluff here, especially with a backdoor flush draw. King 10 suited might fold pre, but if he has that, that's equally an equally good bluff to King Jack suited. More questionable are Ace Jack suited and Ace 10 suited if he has them pre. Very questionable is 10-9 suited, which I think I almost always prefer check calling. But certainly there's probably a total of about, given we have the ace blockers, there's probably a total of about 6 very obvious bluff combos and about another 9 to 10 marginal bluff combos. So I think, given he has a range here, I think he's a pretty decent reg, so I think he probably has a bluffing range here. I'm going to say he has about 11 bluff combos on his flop. I mean, okay. Sometimes I guess people just spaz with some rando backdoor flush draw crap, but yeah. Turn doesn't change anything. Some of his backdoor flush draws got a backdoor flush draw, got a flush draw, but apart from that, because he's going to want to keep barreling pretty much all his value range, he's going to want to keep barreling most of his bluffs. So he bets, we call because we have aces and it's the top of our range. River, it's a blank. I mean, obviously any 7x gets there, but if you think either player really has 7x here ever, then I'm afraid you need to go back to hand reading school. I mean, maybe in my friskiest mood ever, I might show it with a7 of diamonds here, or I mean a7 on the flop with a backdoor flush draw, but that would be an incredibly bad bet and an incredibly bad call of the check raise. So I think we can hopefully exclude most of those from my range, and he almost certainly should never have any 7x. So he jams the river. And the question is, I think, what percentage of the time he's barreling off with his King Jack, King 10 type combos. Because I think, to be honest, I think 9-8 suited is probably actually going to check some sensitive hands to protect the check raise checking range. And we only gave him one combo of that in the first place, so let's remove that combo. So we're assuming he has 10 value combos overall. That's 4 of Jackson suited, 3 of pocket 9s, 3 of pocket 8s. He's betting roughly half pot. We're getting 3 to 1. We need to be good 25% of the time. So we need him to be bluffing 3 combos to have a profitable call when we're talking whole numbers of combos. So we only need him to be barreling off about a quarter of the time with his probable flop bluffing range. I mean, okay, so that's an optimistic flop bluffing range. But even if we give him all the King Jack and all the King 10 suited, then with a backdoor flush draw, then we only need him to be barreling off half the time to have a profitable call. And King 10 should pretty much always be better on the turn because it turns double gutter if it check raises the flop. So when we see that, I think we have a pretty easy call. The other perspective from which I think it's a decent call is that our hand is quite clearly one of the best hands in our range for calling with here. Ace Queen might also be okay, just in case he's got Queen 9 suited pre or he's check raising pocket queens. Ace Queen might be slightly better. But I'm far from certain. I don't think I'd 3-bet Ace Queen there really most of the time in the first place. Kings is obviously really bad to call with here, and I think Kings is actually a pretty easy fold for the reason that it blocks King 10 and King Jack, which are the major parts of his bluffs. Obviously, the more backdoor flush draws you block, the worse it is, because it's going to be more likely this is going to check raise with the backdoor flush draw. But I think any Kings combo is going to be a pretty easy fold. Considering we don't have a really high betting frequency on this flop, I think we can probably defend enough on this river by folding some Kings on turn, if not folding most of them on the flop and just defending other hands instead. But yeah, this hand is just going to be a very clear call, especially considering we have the heart rather than blocking 2 backdoor flush draws, with which Ace Jack and Ace 10 would be more attractive to check raise. Okay, so I think that's a fun hand. Felt kind of sick to call the river at the time, as it always does when you bluff catch in a 300 big blind pot, but yeah, I hopefully I've explained adequately why I feel it's pretty normal and good and standard to call with that particular hand. This I just wanted to talk about because lol, sick hero call. Yeah, we open the button, fish calls in a small blind. We're opening 3x because there's a fish in the blinds. We see bet 10-8-4 rainbow. He calls. 10 turn checks through, and he bets a king rainbow river, and we call. Basically, I just called here because obviously this isn't the only reason, but part of the reasoning is definitely because calling with queen high and winning always feels really good. But the theoretical reason, the substantive reason rather, the reasonable reason I should say is that, well, I mean, consider what he's value betting with, and then consider what he's bluffing with. He's going to 3-bet jacks and queens pre, so we can't have those. He doesn't really have that many king x. If he has a lot of king x, and he also has a lot of hands like queen, like I don't know what, like jack 7 probably, because he's really wide pre. Might also have queen 9, etc. Queen 9. We beat queen 9, which is going to bluff and check call the flop with if he has it pre. We beat jack 9, we beat 9-7, we beat jack 7, we beat 6-5, and he's just not going to bet 9s or worse probably on this river. So considering we're guessing he's betting 10 into 15, so we're calling 10 to 25, we're getting 2.5 to 1. We need to be good about 27. Hold on. 27 multiplied by 3.5 is 91. Not even 20. No, not 91. 81. 95. 28. 28 multiplied by 3.5. Sorry about this, guys. I get kind of obsessed with knowing the exact numbers from time to time. Is 98. So it's probably about 28.5% or something that we need to be good. So I mean, sure, he has some 10x, but I think especially Fish is going to bet that bigger some percentage of the time. He doesn't have a whole lot of king x, and he doesn't have a whole lot of the value bets. So I think it's pretty okay to call here. Theoretically, I think his sizing should be much bigger than this. I think it definitely makes a lot of sense for the small blind to use an overbet as his main sizing here. And that's kind of why we're calling exploitatively really wide, just not folding anything with showdown value here. And most of what we see bet on the flop, which does have showdown value, which doesn't have showdown value, so hands like 6-5 are just going to be strong enough to bet all day on a turn. The reason we don't bet queen jack here is because he has a decent number of 10x after check calling the flop, and because Fish are much more likely to check raise 10x and regs. It's quite attractive to us to guess a free card. Whereas with 6-5, we don't mind him having 10x so much, because if he does check raise, let's remember that Fish often check min raise, we can often peel with pretty good implied odds and stack him some percentage. Okay, so thanks guys. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm not going to go through the rest of the hands. I've only got a few more, but you should have quickly seen them. So, while I was looking for a last couple to go through, so if you really want to ask about any of them, feel free to go back and look at them. And if you ask in the forums thread, I will tell you a thought process for any of them. I've been a definite asker for Grinder Schools. Good luck at the tables, and goodbye.